Hello, as you can see, today for review I've got one of the most interesting models, at least based on the amount of questions about it. It's FiiO's recently released single dynamic drivers FD1. They are actually sharing similar design with not so recent FH1 as hybrid in-ear monitors and their younger brother Jade Audio. So it's a similarly designed single dynamic driver. Here used high quality driver 10mm with beryllium coated diaphragm. Price is set at $70 plus minus few bucks depending on local sellers. And that's probably all I can say about this model in preface. And now let's have a closer look. Box is traditional for FiiO, black, looks nice, bigger than some of the dubs used, and good quality, nothing super spectacular, but nice, decent box. And here you can see this scratch protector, then you can check if this is an original version. It opens with flap on a magnet. So did they print the technical specifications in the manual? Just information about the insertion. What? No tech specs. Strange, but anyway. If I remember right, it's 32 ohms of impedance and something about 106 decibels of sensitivity. Inside you'll have earphones themselves. Let's move what we don't need inside. And here in this cardboard box you will have plastic storage case that reminds Pelican box with accessories. So really good, nice plastic storage case. FiiO sold it separately, but adding it to relatively inexpensive model is definitely a nice step for the company. And you will have a pair of foam tips and two sets of tips. So let me unpack both. So we've seen such tips many times before with red stems and solid black ones. FiiO used them both previously, so 3 pair of each. So 6 pair of tips and even a velcro strip for cable organizing and plastic case. So it's a lesson to learn for companies like KZ, where you can for $70 you sometimes getting just 2 pair of tips and that's all. In terms of design, we've seen that a few times before. It's semi-transparent plastic with celluloid face plates with company's logo, kind of three-dimensional effect on the faceplate. Thanks to this random celluloid pattern, you can see the internals, but actually internals are pretty simple. Here just a dynamic driver, nice ergonomic shape, good build quality, nice extended spout, so they're fitting pretty well into ears. Thanks to the length, sound isolation is a bit above average. There is a pressure relief hole, so almost no driver flex. Lip for holding the tips, protective grill, so all the parts of good, well-built in-ear monitors. Wearing comfort is nice, no sharp edges, fitting pretty nicely, at least to my ears of course, but I think ergonomics is at a good level here, as well as a build quality. Cable is made replaceable, here used 2-pin connectors, just absolutely regular 2 pins without recessed sockets or recessed pins, so just simple 2 pins connectors. There is ear hooks without memory wire effect, but holding the cable really well, and cable is good. So, brown color, average in terms of softness, well braided, bit thicker than KZ1 for example. Splitter, and after splitter it goes braided down to the angle jack, so nice cable, maybe not something super audiophilic, but really good, nice quality copper. And as you can see, in terms of package, in terms of accessory set, design, build quality and other stuff, FiiO delivered as much as possible in this price range. And of course about the sound. They require about 20 hours of burn-in. I know many of you are really skeptical about that, and I also agree that burn-in really rarely changes the sound of in-ear monitors, but that's exactly one of that rare exceptions, because during this first 20 hours sound did settle a little bit. And also really critical is finding the proper tips, because tips here change sound a little, pretty drastically. And there are, you know, quite opposite opinions about this in-ear monitors. I had some fun time reading the HeadFi thread, especially that part when people imagined how these earphones sound and then were angry because they didn't sound this way. But actually there is a way to change their sound in a pretty wide range, and let me give you a spoiler about the way of doing that. So different tips here changes sound in a noticeable way. So with stock tips I like sound with these ones a bit better. Usually I prefer these red stem tips, but they sounding a bit sharper to my ears, and this one is a bit more more balanced. And but of course, you know, ears are different, so outcome can be a bit different. I will speak about the tips a bit later. In terms of sound, it's a V-shaped signature, but with slightly elevated bass and a bit more elevated treble. And also they are really detailed for the dynamic driver, so it's probably not the model for everyone, it's the model for those who like fast dynamic driver in-ear monitors, for those who like good resolution, for those who have a good player to drive them. Actually it's a good and necessary precondition, so let's make it this way. Really good synergy of the $1,300 dub and $60 or $70 earphones. And what else I can say about their sound? So it's natural and bit focused on the micro digitalization. And first point of controversy with really different opinions was low frequencies. So this model is not a bass cannon, not a bass head model, not focused on the low frequencies, but they have accented bass and actually normal depths. Punch maybe not the strongest one, but also pretty good, and actually I'm not liking something in the low frequencies domain. Of course depth could be better, but we are speaking about the affordable model, so it's sub bass is present. Actually main accent here made on the mid bass, and because of that sub bass is not dominating as in some other models, but it's still present, and even with electronic music it delivers a pretty nice amount of kick and punch. But of course it's a matter of taste. So for example, if you like, I don't know, Blonde BL03 with bass dominating over all other frequencies. Of course, it's not a model for you. If you are a fan of more natural and more how to say it, more natural tuning of low frequencies without be super big accent, and if you prefer nice texturing, if you prefer good resolution, it's a really decent model. I'm not feeling that bass here is lacking, but of course it's a matter of preferences. If you're used to some super heavy, super hard-hitting bass, of course it's not the appropriate model. But for me, amount of low frequencies is pretty decent, even in the bass-heavy genres, and where we need actually natural low frequencies, the performance is really good. It's the right amount, actually not too much, not too few, so they are not exaggerating instruments like acoustic bass. They sounding pretty realistic. Of course, in terms of resolution and texturing, it's not something super expensive, or it's not balanced armatures, but it's a good technical dynamic driver leaning a bit towards the faster side of things. And as an example, actually now today it will be Musica Nuda, because I often mention them, but for quite a long time I didn't use them as an example. And Complicci, not sure about the accent here, it's a good example of their music. It's acoustic double bass and vocal, and this in-ear monitor shines with such music. Acoustic bass sounding with full body. It's you hear this, it's deck, you hear the strings resonance, you hear all that parts of note extraction. When fingers pull the string, they release it, and so on. Mids are a bit focused on the micro detalization, so they're not trying to add some additional emotions. So probably it's another source of controversy, because with they require good records, and with something properly recorded, they sounding pretty impressive and pretty accurate. One of the strong parts of this in-ear monitors is pretty big and spacious imaginary stage, with good positioning, with all that three-dimensional stuff. And you know, actually there are a lot of mistakes that people make. For example, many people want the most resolving in-ear monitors, and actually it's not the correct way of choosing in-ear monitors, because the maximum resolution means maximum nitpicking and maximum intolerance for the poor records, for example. Of course, you can hear all the tiniest nuances, but often it leads to the highlighted issues in records. And another example, when everyone is trying to get the biggest, most spacious stage, but for many genres actually it's not a plus, because for example, for some chamber music, big huge stage is not the best option. For example, for Musica Nuda, they don't require huge stage, it's just acoustic bass and vocal, and they shouldn't be like moved to the 50 meters away from one from another. Or another example of genre, it's rock and metal music. They don't require huge stage, because usually rock group is should sounding a bit forward and a bit maybe not super intimate, but more congested. But of course it's still a matter of preferences. I just wanted to say that, because you know, sometimes it surprises me. So they are pretty critical for the quality of records. They require something properly recorded, and if something recorded poorly, they will show it. But from another hand, with good audiophilic records, we will have nice amount of resolution, but at the same time it won't be the balanced armatures resolution, absolutely weightless and thin. It's a dynamic driver, so you will have a proper weight and more natural sounding, comparing with an expensive balanced armatures. And as an example, I got this track. I really like this 50 years of James Bond soundtracks, because so many artists, so many great artists performed the title tracks, and everyone tried to keep all that Bond movies stylistics and at the same time add something from them. And Louis Armstrong did a magnificent job. I think his signature vocal and actually a bit warmer arrangement of this tune performs really good, suits really good to this in-ear monitors and to their resolution. And treble here is accented, and it's also another point of controversy because not everyone likes accented treble, but actually for me the amount of accent is normal. It's a bit on the bigger side, or how to say it, a bit on the brighter side, but for me it's still not the critical level of treble. But if you're treble sensitive, I say it almost in every single review, but if you're treble sensitive, you probably need to listen this model before buying. But actually with these tips you'll have less treble than with these ones. So of course you can alter treble with tips, and foam tips will reduce treble even more, so get the foams if you need less treble. Usually, sometimes there could be exceptions. And treble is also, you know, pretty well performing, actually surprisingly well. It's natural, really good extension, so not superb but slightly above average, sounding airy. And they even show the basic layering and basic overtone saturation, so that things that commonly tend for to some more audiophilic tuned that is common for more expensive models, let's say it this way. And actually, you know, I think it's the illustration that treble requires not only maximum resolution but also a proper speed, because balanced armatures have better resolution on treble, but at the same time they are a bit faster than they should be, and because of that they're lacking a bit of presence. And here we used fast dynamic drivers, so attacks and decays are more closer to lifelike and sounding in a more natural way. And what I've got as an example, oh yes, yet another classical track, maybe not the most prominent treble example, it's a Killer Queen by the Queen, but here used keyboards with pretty good high-pitched overtones, and that demonstrates treble and their realism in a pretty good manner. And to summarize everything, technical V-shaped in-ear monitors without big accent on low frequencies, bit bigger accent on treble, really coherent and with nice weight, and at the same time bit focused on the micro detalization. So not the most universal tuning, and probably not, you know, not the most safe tuning, but actually FiiO have models for those who need other tunings, so I will return to that in the comparisons. In terms of pairing, they are surprisingly demanding. They require something good, like I'd probably say something like FiiO M11 and higher, because of course using top of the line expensive dubs doesn't make much sense, but probably the range from M11 to M11 Pro is the best pairing for them. And actually M11 Pro is the best offered by FiiO to this model, of course to my taste, because the taste different. And I promised to mention the tips, so let's speak about them a little bit. So these stock tips will give you a bit more resolution and a bit less bass depth. And if you need more low frequencies, at least if your ears are common to my, have similar response to tips, because I can't guarantee that this will be true for you. I'm trying to be honest. So the best option is to get the maximum isolation, and the Mandarin Symbio tips by Mandarins will give it to you. I like these tips usually because they give you good sound isolation, they give you nice bass usually, and they give you all the pluses of foam tips, but at the same time without drawbacks. I'm not a big fan of these foams inside of my ears. I don't like this sense, but thanks to silicone cover of foams, thanks to this great idea, they do it well. Spin fits, it's the CP100M or new spin fits. They will make bass a bit more weighty, but at the same time a bit less resolving, so you will have tad more weight and tad more deeper bass. And if you need bigger stage, if you want to expand it even further, here is the spiral dots. They making stage bit bigger, but at the same time they also brighter sounding. Maybe it's some way connected. So here was the tips that I own and I did try. Probably I need to get some more tips to my collection. And speaking about the comparisons, first of all, of course, the models by the FiiO themselves. So Jade Audio EA3, it's more V-shaped in terms of signature, more accented low frequencies, and thinner but a bit more detailed, but a bit less weighty treble. So typical hybrids with V-shaped signature. FiiO FH1S, they are more linear in terms of signature, without such a good treble that I like. Actually, treble of FH1S is more resolving, but just a bit less charming or engaging, or actually probably I can say that treble here is more realistic, let's name it this way. And lot of other models, so just few that I can recall. Hidis Mermaid MS1 Rainbow that I reviewed recently. It's totally different model, much warmer, with less treble, with more bass. I don't know, Shosiform 1.1, also more V-shaped hybrids with more low frequencies, a bit more recessed mids and a bit more accent on treble. What else? Teen Audio T2 Plus, actually bit more low frequencies, surprisingly, you know, it's really unusual to say Teen Audio and more lows, but they retuned T2 and probably did that for good. And more bass, a bit more weighty mids with a bit less resolution, and a bit more calm or polite treble, just a little bit, so don't expect them to be treble shy. There are a lot of other models, so you can just ask me if I forget something, and I definitely forget something. But it was FiiO FD1, actually it was my subjective opinion, I must highlight them. So probably it's better to wait for some more opinions to get more different versions. But I really like these in-ear monitors, I really like their tuning, and probably I like them even more than FH1S and EA3. So thank you for listening and have a nice day.